yourself up in this Humpty Bumpty. You want the show, you got to give up the dough. You know that, baby. Else you in for a long day. A long day. Woo!
Some people thought I was crazy when I brought Barry on board, but I'm a firm proponent of paradigm breaking, outside-the-box thinking. And since Barry's been on our team, giving has gone up 46%.
So who do I need to make this out to?
Just make it out to Watermark.
Okay, great.
$10? $10? Try 10%, punk! And that's just for starters. What's wrong with you, man? You lost your mind. I'm an enforcer, man. Don't nothing get by me in the Lord's house. It's 100% hard, baby. Sure, I check a few fools, but it's about intimidation. It's mind games. Woo-woo! The Prairie Train is coming! Woo-woo! The Prairie Train is coming! Woo-woo!
He's in there! Ready for the pain! Ready for the pain! Please don't hurt me, Barry!
The pain train is coming!
Yeah! Thank you. Thank you, Barry. Oh, thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus.
But what has really impressed me is how Barry's become such a part of the Watermark family. He fits right in here.
Hallelujah. He saved me. You were over budget again this month, Linda. Hey, Christy. Hey, Barry. The Lord's money don't grow on trees. This movement is seeking to reground Christian dogmatics as the locus of God's indirect self-disclosure. And we all know what that means.
That's not to say Barry's gone soft. He still does what he does best.
I just do my job, man. I just do what my God-given abilities allow me to do. And I thank Jesus Christ for it every single day. And do I enjoy what I do? Oh, yeah. This ain't your money, Richard. This is the Lord's money. You can't come up to Watermark, kick my dog, and then keep your money for yourself. Fool, you must be crazy.
Yeah, I can see Rizzo doing that. I think it'd be hilarious, man. I'll tell you what. He'd be good at it, too, you know what? Let me just welcome y'all. Glad that y'all are here, here live at gracelife.tv, El Paso campus, as well as all of you are viewing us online all over the United States, as well as literally around the world. This actually is the final week of our series called Tithe Phobia. As I've said several times before, the last few weeks, it's been 5 years since I talked about money, so I figured I'd just give you the whole load, you know, a whole 5 weeks or 6 weeks of it, you know. But this is the final week today, and in this series we've been talking about what the Bible has to say about giving, not about what, well, we've been talking a lot about what the world has to say or what religion has to say about giving as well, making those comparisons because I think that's important for us. A lot of us were raised in that kind of stuff. We kind of understand that. It's kind of a fearful thing. We've got a lot of that stuff stuck down deep inside that we have a hard time getting rid of, quite honestly, just because we were raised, you know, a certain way, and that creates a difficulty. Well, last week we began looking at at 3 good reasons for giving. That's what we looked at last week, to give generously and with predetermination and for a purpose. This week what we're going to be doing is talking a little bit about the same kind of thing, but from a little different angle. Because, you know, there are a lot of things that, you know, you don't dare talk about in public. Matter of fact, they say that there are several things that you never talk about, you know, like at the dinner table or whatever. And, of course, that's sex, religion, and politics, right? You don't ever talk about those things. Well, Charlie Brown actually said that, you know, you can't talk about, he said there are 3 things, here's what Charlie Brown said, there are 3 things I have learned never to discuss with people: religion, politics, and the Great Pumpkin. You know, I think what he means by that Great Pumpkin is probably what I've found to be true. is that you can talk to people about almost anything, including sex, religion, and politics, but you know, the great pumpkin being that personal finance thing, you know. That's really one thing that you don't dare talk to anybody about unless you have their express permission, right? I mean, you don't talk to somebody else about what they make or how much they make or how much they give to the Lord or all those kind of things, you know. That's kind of some dangerous territory, how much that money they have in their wallet right now. If I were to ask you how much money you have in your wallet or in your purse right now, how many of you would tell me? Well, some of you would say, nothing. You know, it's easy, you know, right? Yeah, well, okay. Would I believe you? Well, yeah, of course I would. Of course I would, you know. You know, but that seems to me that's one of those things you don't dare talk about. You know, it's the worst possible thing you can do is to talk to somebody about their finances, you know, where they spend their money, how they spend. Many years ago, when I worked back when I worked for the U.S. government for about 10 or 11 years, whatever that was, I worked on the big ranches in northern Mexico. And part of my job was, at least the paperwork part of my job was to ask the ranchers how many cattle they ran on their ranch. It's the same thing as asking somebody how much money you got in the bank, especially on BLM land, Bureau of Land Management, if those you may not know that, because they keep really close tabs, right? And they charge you for every cow you've got on the place by the year. And so it was a real tight vested thing, you know, keep those cards real close to your vest because you didn't want anybody to know how many cattle you actually had out there. You only wanted them to know how many they thought you had out there, right? So for me to ask that question was the worst thing you could possibly do. And so I remember one guy in particular, his name was Ernest Montoya. And I asked him that question because I had to fill the paperwork out, you know. So I asked him that question, knowing probably what I was going to get. Sure enough, oh, he cussed me, he fussed at me, he did everything out. He shook his finger at me, walked me out the gate, and told me never to come back on his ranch again, you know. And he was serious about it. Well, in later years, we became good friends, and, you know, it all was okay. But, you know, that's one of those things you just don't really talk to people about. And I don't think we should, and I don't think we need to, especially in a church setting, because that's not what the Bible talks about giving anyway. It's about how much you give or even if you give. That's not my business or anybody else's business. And that's exactly why we are so careful here at GraceLife.tv to choose those people to serve on the finance committee that can be trusted, right? That's why they are chosen very carefully. As a matter of fact, in years past, we have taken people off of that committee because they let something slip somewhere, you know, just not put up with. Just don't do that, you know. They don't tell anybody else what you give or whether you give or don't give. Doesn't matter. That's all personal information. Nobody else knows except the guy that counts the money. That's it. They don't even tell me, nor do I want to know for that matter. I really don't. I just don't want to have that responsibility on my shoulders. So today what I want to do is take a few minutes and to show you how it's actually possible to be a cheerful giver. I always found that verse in the New Testament talks about being a cheerful giver is kind of a strange thing, kind of a funny thing to say, you know, like be a cheerful giver. Yeah, right, you know. The way I was raised is that you're forced to give. You know, how you be a cheerful giver when you're supposed to give or have to give or ought to give or forced to give or whatever the case might be. It's pretty hard to be cheerful about something it's pretty hard to be cheerful about paying your taxes, is it not? Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, well, same thing. It's the same thing that most churches do. So if you're taking notes, we're going to talk about 4 things. And these should be pretty easy things to remember, but you might want to write them down if you got a memory like mine. First one is to a cause. Second one is for a purpose. Third one is with a plan. The third one is without a thought. And those things actually follow logically, but we'll see in a minute that maybe it looks like they don't. So since we've already looked at the fact, as far as the cause is concerned, we've already looked at the fact that we each need to decide in our own heart and our mind whether this church and this ministry is worthy of your support. You'll have to decide that. Nobody else can. If this church and this ministry is worthy of your support, if what we teach and believe here is important to you and important for others to hear, then you need to just decide in your own heart and mind what to do about that and how much you'll give and or even if you will give at all. And that really answers the question of, giving to a cause. People will give to something they believe in. They're not going to give something they don't believe in. Simple fact of the matter. And that's why most churches had to force people into giving. And that's why I refuse to do that. I will not do that here. And that's why we don't even pass an offering plate. It's not, I've had a lot of people say, it's not really a good idea. Well, I agree in one sense, because as long as you pass the plate, then it makes people feel that little twinge of guilt and they feel like they need to give, right? That's the problem. That's the problem. So there's a box in the back. If you want to give, give. If you don't want to give, don't give. It's just simple as that. So as long as we're on that subject then, I want to take a quick look back. We looked at this verse, I've mentioned this passage a few times. It's that, if I can say this, notoriously infamous. Can you put those two words together? I don't know, I'm going to. Notoriously infamous passage in Malachi chapter 3 that talks about the giving of your money, right? At least that's what's always taught. And it says there, will a man rob God? Wow, there's a already, right? Already got us on edge. Yet you are robbing me, exclamation mark. But you say, how have we robbed you in tithes and offerings? You are cursed with a curse, for you are robbing me with the whole nation of you. Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, so that there may be food in my house. And test me now in this, says the Lord of hosts, if I will not throw open the windows of heaven and pour out for you a blessing until it overflows. Then I will rebuke and devour you, so that if it will not destroy the fruits of the ground, nor will your vine in the field cast its grapes, says the Lord of hosts. All the nations will call you blessed, for you shall be a delightful land, says the Lord of hosts. Okay, we looked at part of that at an earlier date. About the idea that we're supposed to give or have to give or ought to give or those kind of things. But let me ask you just a couple of different questions right here to get us thinking in the right direction. Let me ask you this question first of all. Does God say that I will curse you if you don't give? No, it really doesn't say that. He simply says you are cursed with a curse. He doesn't say I will curse you with a curse. He says you are cursed with a curse. There's a difference between God saying, I will curse you with a curse, and saying, follow this through with me because we'll get there in a second, and saying you are cursed with a curse. Okay, so let me ask you the next question, and this is probably the most important one. Who is the you in this in this passage? I know religion always teaches that it's you as an individual. Not only and that if you as an individual don't give, God will curse you. Right? It doesn't say that. As a matter of fact, the you here is not in the singular. It's in the plural. Because he says that you as a nation, the whole nation of you. He's not saying you as an individual. And yet that's what we're taught, isn't it? We're always told, if you don't give, God will curse your life, and that's why things are going bad in your life right now. That's not even what it says. That's not even good, decent scholarship as far as how to read, what you're reading. You're not even understanding what you're reading. You're passing over it and making something out of it that's not even there, right? No, God will not curse you personally, and it's not even God that does that. He just simply says, you will be cursed, or you will be cursed with a curse. So what I want you to see is that the you in this passage is not singular, it's plural. So how is it possible then that he says we, let's bring this down to local, right? He's talking about the nation of Israel at this point, but let's take that we in a little tighter circle. Let's say we right here, right? As GraceLife.tv, this ministry, this church, whatever you want to call it. How is it that we are cursed then, if that's the case, which I believe it is? Well, simply in the fact that when those who can give don't give, everyone suffers, right? Now, we're not talking about an amount here or a percentage. And I would say personally that all of us can give something. You know, a little boy came up to me 2 weeks ago, and he was so proud of himself, and he said, and I don't, because he's not in here during this part, so he must have got it from somewhere. But he said, I put everything that I have in the offering box. So, well, that's awesome, you know. Of course, he was looking for a pat on the back, which is fine. So I patted him, you know, I told him, yeah, that's awesome, that's great. He said, I gave everything I have, a whole nickel. Great, that's awesome, you know, it really is. That's cool. All of us can give, in my opinion, all of us can give something. But there again, I'm not going to put that on you as a guilt trip, just saying that, you know, you need to decide in your own heart and your own mind, you know, whether you will give or how much you will give. That doesn't matter. That's not the important thing here. Okay, so how are we cursed? Well, because if those of us who can give or will give or want to give don't give, then everybody suffers. Well, and the reason is because not only does those who do give have to carry the burden of the whole, which is really, that's really the way things are probably worldwide. Those who can give or are willing to give carry the burden of the whole for those who either can't or won't. And so if we can give and we don't, then we cause problems with everybody else. It causes the whole body. It's like Paul said over in the Corinthians. He talks about the fact that, you know, hey, listen, and this is a Ratzlaff paraphrase, but it's perfect. If your thumb hurts, the whole body suffers, right? That's why little kids, you know, they're limping when they come in to talk to mom. What happened? I hurt my finger, right? Yeah. Or the blonde that went to the doctor and said it hurts here, and it hurts here, and it hurts right there. I said, well, I don't know what your problem is. You got a broken finger. Isn't that kind of how we are, though? I mean, really. Uh-oh, I might be in trouble later. Anyway, you know, the fact is that there are people in our community and around our world today that really do need help. Whether it's orphanages that need help, or whether it's poor people that need food, or probably most importantly, because I remember Jesus always saying, you know, hey, the poor you're always going to have with you. You know, the poor are always going to be there. Well, but the fact is, not everybody's going to hear the message of Big G grace in Jesus Christ. That's what's important. That's really the most important thing. But all of that takes money. Doesn't matter. So the fact is, God is not being robbed, as we're often taught. God is not being robbed in the sense that God wants or needs our money. We've already talked about that. What's God need money for? He owns this whole universe. He's the one who created everything. Why does God need your money? He doesn't. But you know what? Each individual ministry does. If we're going to get the word out, if we're going to see that word get out, the message of God's Big G grace, how awesome that is, it's only going to be through the generosity of God's people. That's all. So the first one then is to give to a cause. Do you believe in the cause or don't you? If you do, you'll need to decide whether it's worthy of supporting or not. You know, and that's actually in the New Testament what Paul called the cause of Christ in Philippians 1:13. Okay, in my opinion, to a cause answers the why question as well. You know, why should I give? Well, because it's important. And then when I do give, what should I give of my finances to and how much, right? All those questions are answered if you say give to a cause. It's something you believe in. So, you know, we here at GraceLife.tv have this vision that God has given us to, you know, to help people find freedom from their fear of what God might do to them because of their sin, and how awesome God's grace is. And it's not just enough, we don't just need just enough money to pay the bills, because certainly that keeps the doors open, but that's as far as we go. You know what I'm saying? That's as far as we go, as we just barely keep the doors open. So it takes more than that. It doesn't take just enough to keep the doors open. If we're going to help other people, it's going to take more than that. It's going to take more than that. And I guess it's kind of like the put your money where your mouth is kind of a thing. So the question you need to answer in your own heart and your own life is GraceLife.tv, is this ministry worth giving to, or is it not? Are the ministries we're involved in worth supporting financially? Second key to naturally follows giving to a cause, which is for a purpose, right? We've kind of already talked about that in a lot of ways. If you're going to give to a cause, give for a purpose. Well, what purpose? Well, for the purpose of helping people find freedom from their fear of what God might do to them because of their sin, because our world lives in that fear every day. Hebrews tells us that that's where our world is, period. Whether they realize it or not, people are in fear of God all the time. Everybody is. A lot of people, we've learned to ignore that, pretend like it doesn't exist, all those different kind of things. But you know what? When it comes down to it, I've been on the bedside with a lot of people who are dying, and when it comes down to it, that's the thing they fear the most. They've learned to ignore it all their life. But when it comes to the last minute, it all comes flooding back, you know. Interesting. This extra won't cost you nothing. I found that a lot of times Christians, born-again believers in Jesus Christ, I believe sincerely are believers in Christ, often have those same kind of questions. It's because the way we're raised, you know. We've been raised with this idea that, you know, you got to be good enough, you got to live a good life, you know. And that's why you start wondering, well, I did this wrong, I didn't live right, all those different kind of things. Well, you know, if we know what Big G Grace is all about, that stuff really is immaterial. It's immaterial. It doesn't even hit the pan, right? So as necessary as it is, and needed as it is, as the millions of dollars that were used and were given to help victims of the recent disasters in Haiti and Chile and all other places in the world, there's billions of people worldwide who really need to hear the message of Big G Grace in Jesus Christ. And that's really, in my opinion, where it's at. Because people are living in that constant fear every day. And the truth that Jesus has already paid the penalty for all those sins, that it's a moot issue, that sins are not the issue anymore, is an extremely important message to get out to our world today. So that they, instead of running away from Christ or running away from God, they run to Him for the truth. And Jesus is the truth. He says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And no one comes to the Father except through me. So that's why Paul asked those series of questions. In Romans chapter 10, he begins by quoting a verse out of the Old Testament. And he said, whoever will call on the name of the Lord will be saved, He didn't say whoever confesses their sins to God and asks Him to forgive them, they will be saved. He didn't say that. Even in the Old Testament. He's quoting out of the Old Testament. Whoever believes in Him will be saved, right? And then, of course, well, how will they hear, unless somebody sends them? And how are they going to hear without a preacher? And if they don't have a preacher, who's going to send the preacher? And how are they going to send the preacher if they ain't no money to send him with? That's why I just don't talk about money very often, because it's a given. It's just a given, We all know that. Okay, to a cause, for a purpose, with a plan. Now, you got to know, I was raised as a preacher's kid in a denominational church, and so I was taught a lot of these kind of things. And with a plan, I think, in my mind, answers the how and the when questions. Because I was taught that, and there's different schools of thought. Some say, well, you got to give every Sunday. If you get paid once a week or once a month, you still split it up into 4 equal sections and you give every Sunday. If you want to go the legalist route, that's what you're supposed to do, right? And I was a lot of times taught those things. So in 1 Corinthians chapter 16, Paul begins to talk about taking up a collection for the saints. And in that passage, he talks about On the first day of the week, he says, that's when you gather this. On the first day of the week, of every week, each one of you is to put aside and save as he may prosper, so that no collection be made when I come. And this verse is used to support that idea that you give every week. I can understand why they want to make you believe that, is because it's kind of the force of habit thing, right? But I don't think force has anything to do with this. All he's saying is that, on a regular basis, make a plan. Make a plan. And then go ahead and stick by that plan. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to revisit it every week or every month or whatever the case might be. Because, I'll put it this way. When I was a kid, as a preacher's kid, it was not, I don't remember ever, in later years I heard other kids say this, but I don't remember ever, myself or my siblings, my brothers or my sister, ever asking on a Sunday morning, are we going to church? Nobody, it never even crossed my mind, ever. It was a given, Well, I know, it's because I was a preacher's kid. You're going to go to church. Never asked that question. Other people have, I'm sure, but I never did. And I think the same thing is with the plan here is that, it's like with anything else in our lives. You buy a new car, you make a plan. The plan is to pay it off by a monthly basis, if that's how you do it, if you finance it in that way. So he says, he's just saying, that's all he's saying here, in my opinion, is just make a plan. Because it's a lot easier that way. You might find it interesting to know that even though Paul literally gave more attention to giving than any other New Testament writer, he never used the word tithe. He talked about money more than anybody else did, but he never used the word tithe. Instead, like in this case, he couches the whole thing, the whole giving thing, within the context of individual responsibility and choice. You decide. He simply says, here's the plan, Give in proportion to which God has prospered you, and then when you do give, just make it a regular practice. I know because I see the envelopes come in the mail. I have no idea how much is in them, but I see some envelopes come in the mail on every month, and it says payment enclosed. I know that there are some people, I don't know who they are, that here at GraceLife.tv that just have made that connection with GraceLife.tv and said, okay, on a monthly basis between you and my bank, that my bank will send you, I guess maybe they do it with their bank personally, just send this amount of money to my church every month. I don't even want to see it. It just comes out of my account. That's easy. That's a good way to do it. That's a plan, right? You don't have to think about it. Like brushing your teeth. You just, if there's a time of day when you just do it. Don't think about it. You don't have to stop and go, oh man, maybe I better do that. Now we began several weeks ago about asking, several rather simple questions which I said generally betray the fact that we're probably asking the wrong questions on the wrong track to start with. And that is, how much should I give, right? Well, God says just give whatever you decide to give. It's no big deal. I don't think there's any condemnation from God or anybody else there when we just, however much that is. Now, if you want to see that as a percentage, figure out make a percentage, that's fine. I don't care. If you want to give a dollar amount, I don't care. That's fine. If you don't want to give anything at all, I don't care. That's fine. Between you and God anyhow. Not me. Not me and you and God, but between you and God. But each one, Contemporary English Version says, each of you must make up your own mind about how much to give. I think that's a good way to put it. You got to search your own heart, decide in your own life, for your own self, how much the Lord is speaking to your heart to give. Whether that's a percentage or amount, or doesn't matter. Now it doesn't matter. Okay. So another thing I think you need to know is that this isn't necessarily tied to income. Because whenever we think about tithe, that's why I call this tithe phobia, because whenever we think about tithe, we think about a percentage, right? Always think about, well, I guess we just been trained that way or whatever. But all Paul's saying is everybody's encouraged to participate. It doesn't matter whether you make, $10,000 a week or $1 a year. That's not the point. Actual amount that we may give seems to have little to nothing to do with our actual income. That's not the issue. But every time you talk about tithe, you're thinking about percentage of income. Throw that, if you can, throw that out of your head. Get rid of it. Don't think about it anymore, because that's not what it's about. In 2 Corinthians chapter 8, it talks about some people in Macedonia who joyously gave more than they could actually afford to give. Didn't we talk about a couple of weeks ago, or maybe last week, about the widow who gave everything she had? The same thing. Same thing. On the other hand, Jesus said, well, those who gave a lot had a lot. No big deal. Those who gave a little, gave a little. No big deal. Just the way it is. So, not only does Paul answer then the how much question, but he also answers the how often, regularly. I know people in the past have given, some folks that used to come here, have moved away since, gave once a year. A big check, once a year. Cool. That's the plan. You decide. You decide how that plan goes. It's all up to you. But the fact is, bills come due every month here. Bills got to be paid. If we don't do that, doors don't stay open. And if we don't do more than that, we don't reach very many people. That's all. Okay, so last one. Then we're going to quit. We're going to be done with tithe phobia. So God's plan not only includes, to a cause, for a purpose, with a plan, but also without a thought. And I think we've kind of already answered that one. Because can you have a plan without thinking about it? Actually, you can. Like I said, when I was a kid, nobody ever asked the question, are we going to do this? Are we going to go to church on Sunday morning? Nobody ever did, not in our family. I remember one guy who said he was a comedian, said he was a preacher's kid. I can really relate to this. He said he was a preacher's kid, and he said, you know what? He said, we just had to go to church. And one Sunday I got up and said, Dad, I'm sick. I can't go to church. I'm sick. He didn't want to go to church. Dad said, throw up and prove it. And he said, if I couldn't throw up and prove it, I'd have to go to church. So he said, one Sunday I said, Dad, I'm sick. He said, throw up and prove it. I did. He said, I threw up. Dad says, now don't you feel better? Let's go to church. Yeah. Well, a plan is important, but I'm not sure that it's got to be that bad of a plan, Oh, man. But if we make that plan and do it on a regular basis, it's like paying your car payment or your house payment or anything else. It's a plan, you don't think about it. You just do it, and that's all there is to it. So it becomes very easy in that way. So once again, we don't have to begin debating. And I'm thinking more on when I was a kid going to church than I am about finances at this point, because it's not about debating. We didn't get up on Sunday morning and all get together as a family and debate, are we going to church today? We just did, right? But the same thing applies with our finances, and I don't debate that with myself either. I give what I give, and I give it every month because that's the easiest for me. And I don't think about it. I've got it on my list of things that I pay, and that's where it's at. No big deal. I don't have to wonder, revisit that and say, well, can I afford that this month? Should I do that this time, and how much should I give? I don't do that. I've saved myself those questions and those problems by just saying, deciding in my own heart and my own mind how much I'm going to give and not to give once a month. Just the way it is. It's just simple as that. Because if we start thinking about it, it's what Jesus called, don't let your left hand know what your right hand's doing. And so the Bible says that God loves a cheerful giver. Well, I think we've answered that question. Because if you look down this list, to a cause, for a purpose, with a plan, and without a thought, then you've covered all those things. You're giving to a cause because that's what you want to give to, right? You're giving for a purpose because that's a purpose you believe in. You've made this plan to make it easier on yourself because this cause and this purpose are worth your financing. So you've done that. And then finally, the last thing is you can do that without having to think about it every month. And so that's why I found this God loves a cheerful giver thing to be kind of funny. Is because most of us have been raised in the culture where it's pretty hard to be happy about giving anything when you're, especially if you're forced to give or think you have to give or you ought to give. No. It's to a cause you believe in, for a purpose that you believe in, with a plan, just to save yourself some trouble so you don't have to think about it all the time. You believe in it, so you do it. Simple as that. How many weeks did it take us to come to that? Too many, I know. But we're done. It's been fun. I've enjoyed it. I've learned some things myself. I hope you've learned some stuff. God's awesome. The message that we teach and preach here at GraceLife.tv is definitely, from a personal standpoint, worthy of financing and worthy of my time and worthy of the gifts that God has given me to exercise those gifts here. I would encourage you to do the same thing. Now, you know what? The Lord is a warrior, and I'm going to stand as a warrior in God's kingdom alongside Him, because I know that He is the warrior who has already fought and won that battle, and I'm ready for it. Let's go for it. Lord bless you all. Amen. Give God a hand.